Good afternoon and Happy New Year to everyone. Um, as I've been sitting here the last couple of days and even today, just enjoying the new year and just reflecting on the last year, I've been scrolling through social media probably too much, and I kept seeing different posts from people about how 2018 was a horrible year, that it kicked them down, that um, it was really just a bad year, and they're ready for 2019 because we always have that renewed hopeful expectation at the beginning of the year. And I began thinking and reflecting on years past, and it seems like every year it's the same post that everybody's tired of this year. We're tired of the old, we're ready for the new because of the hardships and the difficulties that we faced during the previous year. But I'm not downplaying any of those difficulties, because my wife and I have had our own share of difficulties and rejections and just different hardships. But we also had a huge blessing. We had our first daughter that was born, and in that, her being born really solidified the idea and the understanding of the paradox of discipleship for our lives in following Jesus. That we live in this both and instead of just either or, because we can't always live in these sublime, pristine moments of living on a mountaintop of an easy life. We're going to have hardships. We're going to have crappy days. We're going to have crappy weeks and crappy months and crappy years. But all of it is designed to draw us into a deeper relationship and to transfigure us more into the likeness of Christ. And there's this paradox. And what really solidified this for me was the day that we came home with our daughter from the hospital. We had been at the hospital for 3 days, and the day that we came home with our daughter, I had to rush our oldest dog to the emergency vet, and his health was failing and wasn't doing good, and the treatment options were pretty bleak. And so we made probably one of the toughest decisions I had to make, and I put down our dog on the same day that we brought home our daughter. And so there was this joy of life with having my daughter and bringing her home, but also the pain and agony of losing man's best friend of 13 years. And there was this tension over that week of joy and heartache and rejoicing and sorrow. And it made me reflect on the year and think about these posts that I've been seeing from other people, that we endure these things in paradox of each other, in tension with each other, because we can't have just the joy and just the easy, because we would never appreciate it as much as when we have the hardship and difficulties. And that's not to say, not to downplay the good things or to exalt the bad things, but we live in this tension with each other. We take the stick and we bend the ends of the stick, and we tie a string between them, and those paradoxes that don't make sense, those paradoxes that seem to come at us from both sides of life that don't make sense. Like, why does this have to happen? Trust me, I had plenty of questions like, why this day, God, that I had to put my dog down? But that's like icing on the cake at the end of the year. The whole year was difficult, just like for many of you. And it made me think of Paul's letter to the Philippians in chapter 4. We often think of Philippians 4:13, that I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Yada, yada, yada. It's like the most overused next to Jeremiah 29:11. It's the most like popular verse that everyone likes to use. But even before that, what he's really saying is, but I rejoiced in the Lord greatly that now at last you have received your concern for me. Indeed, you are concerned before, but you lacked opportunity. Not that I speak from want, for I have learned to be content in whatever circumstances I am. I know how to get along with humble means, and I also know how to live in prosperity. In any and every circumstance, I have learned the secret of being filled and going hungry, both of having abundance and suffering need. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. Paul knew what it was like to have good times. Paul was a Pharisee of Pharisees. He was a tent maker. He had Roman citizenship. So he understood what the good life was. But if following Jesus is God's got this wonderful plan for your life, then God hated Paul, because Paul, when he followed Jesus, was stoned, beaten, shipwrecked, whipped, put in jail, left for dead, bitten by snakes. I mean, he was run through the gamut. And he said, I've had prosperity and I've had hardship. I've had a full belly and I've had an empty belly. And I live in that paradox of both of these and follow Jesus. Because if I have one, I'm missing out, because in my suffering, I get to share in Christ's suffering. And it made me think of, again, kind of that train of thought, my ADD just bouncing around between scriptures, going to James chapter 1, where James 1:2 says, "Consider it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance, and let endurance have its perfect result, so that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing." And so that is my prayer and my word of encouragement for you this year. If you had a crappy 2018, if you had a crappy 2017, 2016, 2015, maybe you've had a crappy few years, I just want to encourage you that we live in paradox of that tension between difficulty and rejoicing, sorrow and heartache and rejoicing, and the joy of life and death. We bring them into tension. We bring prosperity, we bring brokenness and broken bank accounts into tension with one another. We bring good health and bad health into tension with one another. And so this year, as you go into 2019, as we traverse the next 365 days, I want you to set in the forefront of your mind that we endure hardship and we rejoice in blessings all the same. We rejoice in hardships. I think about that when Paul gives us that. I mean, he talks about it in Romans, and we see it in James, and we see it kind of throughout his ministry, that rejoice in suffering. It's not easy, but we take the hardships and the crappy times that kick us in the gut, and we take the times of rejoicing, of new life, of birth, of blessing, of financial blessing, of good health, whatever it is. We take those things, we live in tension with them, because when we bend the ends of the stick and we tie a string to both ends, we can shoot an arrow. And when the cams are off, as an archer, I think of the two cams on the end of a compound bow, and when one of them is off, your arrow is going to fly off. And so when we only focus on looking at the bad in our life, our arrow is going to fly off. When we only focus on looking at the good or looking for the good, our arrow flies off. And so we look at the difficulties and the blessings that we live with and that we encounter in day-to-day life, and we put them in tension. We thank God for the difficulties, we thank God for the blessings, and we move forward because all of those things are meant to transfigure us into the likeness of Christ. So friends, my prayer is that you have a blessed and a great 2019, even in hardship, even in difficulty, even in bad health, even in debt, even in sorrow, even in heartache and lost jobs and cars that explode, whatever. I don't care what the situation is, but that our lives live in tension with Jesus. And so friends, this year, don't focus just on the horrible things that happened. Don't focus just on the good. Don't look for just the good, but let's live in the tension of both the good and the bad as we embark on this new year. All right, guys, I love you. I hope you have a great new year. Enjoy the holiday season with your family. I know kids start back to school pretty soon, but enjoy that time. All right, guys, have a great day. Bye-bye.